What's going on, everybody? Scott Callen here with Mountaineers Now, a SI Fan Nation channel, and we are back here on the Between the Ears show. Today, we're going to be breaking down my game-by-game season predictions for West Virginia football. And I got to be honest with you, this was a hard schedule to really go through and dissect just because of the unknowns. You don't know if JT Daniels is going to stay healthy. You don't know how the defense is going to stay. If they're going to stay at the top of the league or if they're going to take a step back with the losses of Akeem Messidor, Darrell Porter Jr., Nick Troy Fortune. They have some intriguing pieces coming in, obviously, that we talked about the last couple of weeks with Lee Koba being one of those guys at linebacker and all those transfers that they brought in at cornerback too. So it's going to be a very interesting year. I could see it going many, many different ways. And I don't think there will be a scenario in which I'm completely surprised. But that being said, let's go ahead and get to our schedule here and just see what I put out. You've probably already seen this if you follow us on Twitter at SI_WVU. But if you haven't, let's take a dive into it now. All right, so our first game, obviously, the backyard brawl in Pittsburgh at Heinz Field. Actually, let me take that back. Acrisure Stadium, or whatever it's called. September 1st against Pitt. This is going to be a good game. And, I know both sides kind of look at the other in this one and think, there's not much to be concerned about. I've seen that a lot from West Virginia fans saying, Kenny Pickett, Jordan Addison, those guys are gone. Both to the Pickett to the NFL, the Steelers, and Addison to USC, and they look at that and think, well, this Pitt team's beatable. And for Pitt fans, they look at this as a brand new quarterback again for West Virginia. Some big losses on the defensive side. You lose Letty Brown, a workhorse at running back. So there's definitely multiple areas of, I don't know, weakness is the word, but maybe questions that each fan base can point to and say, this is another reason why we can win this game. So, I really struggled with this one. I really, really did. I think Pitt is much, much better than what the West Virginia fan base thinks they're going to be in 2022. That said, I'm not sold on them being an ACC championship caliber team again like they were a year ago. I just don't see it happening. When you lose the amount of production that they had, that's tough to replace, tough to get back to that type of standing in the ACC. So I'm going to go with West Virginia getting the win here. It's going to be a close game, like I said. Don't expect this to be one-sided either way, however the result comes out to be. But I'm gonna lean towards West Virginia here. I just think with JT Daniels having been in Graham Harrell's system before, that's going to give him a little bit of an edge over Keaton Slovis, who's kind of entering a new situation. So we're going to go West Virginia here, banking on that this will be a game that JT Daniels is healthy for. And they start off the season 1-0 against Pitt in the backyard brawl. Again, not 100% sure that this is the way this game's going to go. But since I was kind of back and forth on it, I'm going to lean toward West Virginia so I don't get a lot of fans coming at me for it either. So the next two games, Kansas and Towson. Obviously, two very winnable games, two games that Mountaineers should win, and if they don't, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. Because if you lose to either of these two teams, no offense to the Jayhawks and Towson, but if you lose either of these two games, you're probably going to be in a world of hurt in terms of just trying to get bowl eligible, because the schedule is only going to get tougher from here on out. So I'm going to go ahead and give them two more wins here. I think everybody can agree with that. You can disagree or agree on the opening week game against Pitt, but I think everyone, when looking at West Virginia's schedule, says they will win these two games. So if they get past Pitt, they're going to be 3-0 going into that Virginia Tech game on the road, and that's huge. Um, because if you can go 3-0 going into Virginia Tech, which is a tough game Thursday night in Blacksburg, not an easy place to play, which we'll go here, and obviously you can see I have them winning. But you set yourself up for a scenario in which your team's gaining a lot of confidence early on. They believe in themselves and believe that they could be a real legit threat in the Big 12. If you have that kind of mindset entering the full Big 12 slate, which starts the following week after this Virginia Tech game, you've got a chance to do something special. You drop one to Pitt, maybe you drop both to Pitt and Virginia Tech, or you lose to Virginia Tech, or maybe you lose to Kansas, then things start to change quite a bit. So this start to the season, although it's got some challenges to it, there's a path to go into Big 12 play 3-1, 4-0, and you're feeling pretty good about yourself. The reason I have Virginia Tech as a win, it's not a great situation that Virginia Tech has. I do think Brett Pry is going to be a very good head coach for them, but he's entering a tough situation. This team has been on the decline for the last couple of years. They don't really have great depth, a lot of roster turnover, obviously a whole new coaching staff, and just a team that's not really ready to compete in 2022. That said, there is a few guys from that team last year that lost in Morgantown that are going to remember this game, where they had a chance to win it at the very end at the goal line, and the Jackie Matthews PBU broke it up to win the game for the Mountaineers. So there's going to be some revenge on the mind of some of those players, but and playing, like I said, playing Thursday night is going to be an insane atmosphere. I just don't think Virginia Tech's quite ready to compete in this game. I know the game was close last year, but West Virginia's kind of took a step in the right direction, while Virginia Tech's not necessarily took a step back in the wrong direction, or took a step in the wrong direction. It's more so they're just taking a step in a different direction with the new coaching staff, and you don't know where that step's going to take them. So I'm going to go West Virginia here, starting off 4-0. Now, you're probably thinking, again, if you have not seen this article, okay, how many wins can they end up with? This could be the start of something special. But here's where it starts to get a little tough. And as you can see, I already slipped up and showed the Baylor one too, so we'll just go ahead and throw them in there. Make sure I don't show the next one. You go to Texas and you return back home for Baylor, and I have them losing both of these games. Texas, they're not back. Okay, we're not going to get back to saying Texas is back. Quinn Ewers is a great talent, but is he going to be the starting quarterback for the entire season? Is he going to be the starting quarterback next year when Arch Manning comes? Probably not. But they do have a lot of talent. They've got some big dudes up front, both sides of the ball, and most importantly, they probably have the best running back and wide receiver in the Big 12 in Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy. Those two guys alone can help take a freshman quarterback a lot of places. So when you look at West Virginia and how they've been able to defend the run over the last few years, at least under Neil Brown, it's been kind of hit and miss for the most part, but when they get into playing some of these big power run teams or these zone run teams, they've really struggled. And Neil talked about it. I don't know if it was during the Big 12 media days or maybe it was back in the spring. I can't remember, but he had said something about this, that for the defense, that's the next step for them to be able to defend the best rushing teams in the Big 12 and be one of the better teams at doing so. They want to be at the top of the league in rushing defense, but it really comes down to doing it against the best running teams in the league. Texas might be the best in the Big 12 this year in terms of running the football. They have some other guys too outside of Bijan Robinson that can give not only just West Virginia but other teams in the Big 12 problems too. So playing in Texas, that's going to be a tough atmosphere for this team, but I don't really think it's the atmosphere that's going to win this or lose this game for West Virginia. I think it's more so just the inability to stop the running game. And I mean, let's face it, you go back and look at the schedule. I mean, Abanikanda pit's pretty good, but he's not the same style running back as Bijan Robinson. Kansas and Towson, they don't have a Bijan Robinson on the roster. Virginia Tech doesn't have that guy. So this is the first time this season, and they're going to be a full month into the season, and they're going to finally be seeing a guy that can just plow right through you and do it over and over and over again for 4 quarters. So that's going to be kind of a new thing for West Virginia to see. The Baylor game, I think West Virginia actually has a chance to pull this one out as an upset, and I almost marked it down as one. There's just, again, so many questions with West Virginia, not as many for Baylor. The Baylor question mark is Blake Shapen, the quarterback, and I don't know if you could really call him a question mark because he did come in and start a few games for them last year, and I believe even the Big 12 championship, and looked really, really good. Took exceptionally good, good care of the football. I don't even think he threw an interception last year, if I remember correctly. So, their defense is going to be just incredibly good. And I think it has a chance to be one of the top 5, top 10 defenses in the country. They're going to be that talented. And when you have a defensive mind like Dave Aranda, that's going to make that team even more dangerous. So Baylor, don't know if they're going to be the Big 12 champs again this season. I don't know how well they'll handle having the target placed on them, but I think they're going to be able to get out of Morgantown with a win. This drops West Virginia to what we got here, 4-2. Texas Tech. Now this is the one I did not want to put it as this, but for whatever reason, Neil Brown just has not figured it out against Texas Tech. 0-3, and some very, very weird games, I would say, against Texas Tech in those first 3 years. They just, last year, they could not figure out anything offensively. They couldn't get anything going. It took them until the second half to finally get going. And when they did, it was too little too late. 2 years ago down in Lubbock, that's the game where, they just completely fell apart in the second half. Couldn't do anything offensively. And I believe that was the game where the fumble was the one that was the reason that won the game. I think Daggy threw a screen out to, maybe it was Winston Wright, one of the receivers, dropped the ball, ran back for 6, and that ended up being the game-winning touchdown. So it's just been a weird series between WVU and Texas Tech over the last 3 years, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like this season. I mean, I think when you go into Lubbock, it's always, again, a tough place to play. They've got a new coaching staff too there with Joey McGuire, but I mean, when you look at it on paper, it should be a win for West Virginia. It really should. There should be no question about it. But I just have this weird feeling, this may be the time of the year where guys start to get beaten up a little bit. I mean, this is almost 2 months into the season now. That could be an issue that could come into play, but there's always one of those games that it seems like West Virginia, especially in Neil Brown's time there, that they lose a game they shouldn't lose. Absolutely should not lose at all. And this year, it seems like at Texas Tech, October 22nd is that game. Back in the winning column. So now, after losing 3 straight games, TCU comes in and they beat the Horned Frogs. Move to, 5-3 now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, 5-3 on the season. TCU is an interesting team just solely based on the offense. I think Max Dugan's got a great chance to be one of the top, maybe top 3 quarterbacks in the league. They've got some running backs. They've got, obviously one of the better receivers as well. But it's just that defense is going to be so bad. It was really bad a year ago. And had Gary Patterson returned, I would have expected that defense to take a step in the right direction. But when you lose Gary Patterson, it's hard to fix a defense. And Sonny Dykes is not a defensive guy. So this TCU team obviously doesn't have the same firepower that 2012 West Virginia team had with Geno Smith, Tavon Austin, Stedman Bailey. But I feel like a lot of their games are going to end up being the same way for them this year as that 2012 WVU team, in that they're going to be able to score points, but they're not going to be able to stop people from scoring points. And it's going to be a lot of shootouts and a lot of games where they're going to have to hope they can outscore their opponent. And in this league, where, really over the last couple of years, the league has kind of transformed into becoming, I wouldn't say more of a defensive league, but the defenses are getting much better. I don't know if that style is going to be able to work for them. And I just think you're going to have at least an average defense to have a chance. And I just don't know if TCU even has that. So coming to Morgantown, that's going to be a rowdy atmosphere for TCU. And I think West Virginia, this is a really good chance. Again, we're just assuming JT Daniels is going to be healthy, because if not, we'll be saying that about every single game. This is a really good game, I think, for he and those receivers to start clicking, and maybe he puts up a performance where he goes, 26 for 38 for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. And this is the game that you can point back to and say, this is where the offense turned the corner. So West Virginia gets back in the win column, 1 win away from bowl eligibility. Do they get it in their next one? Yes, they do. So now they are 6-3 on the season, as I have them beating Iowa State. Look, Matt Campbell has done a phenomenal job with that program, but they're losing some very, very big pieces in Brock Purdy and Breece Hall, along with many, many others. This is going to be a bit of a challenge for Matt Campbell, because I think it's going to tell a lot about how good of a coach he is. Now, yeah, you could say he's already proven himself, but how is he when that first, cycle of players roll through that he had success with leave? This is the telling tale, I think, for him. There's a lot of questions in terms of who's going to be the running back. They haven't had a running back question seemingly since he's been there with David Montgomery and Breece Hall. And now the quarterback question comes into play. Hunter Decker is probably going to be the starting quarterback, but there's just so many uncertainties with this team. And I actually think they're going to finish toward the bottom of the league. I don't remember if I had them 7th or 8th, but I had them definitely in the bottom half of the league in my preseason poll. It's just seems like a game. Again, you're going to be building off of that TCU win with JT Daniels potentially having a big game. Maybe the running game gets going this game, and you can start to have your healthy balance, your healthy mix of pass to run. So I think this is just a really good spot for WVU here, and they get the bowl eligibility, getting to 6-3. Now the wheels start to fall off. They will not get to 9 wins. They will not get to 8 wins. Do they get to 7 wins? I will say this. So since I already gave that away, I do have them losing to Oklahoma and Kansas State. Oklahoma, you look at it, Lincoln Riley's gone, Caleb Williams is gone. It looks like an opportunity for West Virginia to win, right? It looks like an opportunity for Oklahoma to take a step back and not be, sitting at the top of the Big 12. Don't get caught into that. This is still a very talented team. Brent Venables is a very good defensive coach, which is something that they've needed. And Dylan Gabriel is a really, really good quarterback. Threw for 70 touchdowns at Central Florida. I know it's Central Florida, but this kid's special. He's got a chance to do something really good. So when you look at last year's game, West Virginia had several chances to put that game away, just could not do it. And I think the problem this year is going to be going against Brent Venables' defense. I think that defense is going to take a major leap. Is it going to be a top 10 defense in the country? Probably not, but this is going to be a unit that is much improved, and I think you're going to see them play better complementary football, which is something with Lincoln Riley I don't think you could say. The defense and special teams were kind of hit and miss. I think that's going to be a heavier focus for this coaching staff, thus making them a better and more complete team. So I until they do it, I've picked West Virginia, I think, in my preseason predictions to beat Oklahoma each of the last 2 years, maybe. Yeah, each of the last 2 years. I'm not going to have it happen again. I'm not going to do it. Not going to buy into it. Until they beat Oklahoma, I'm going to go with Oklahoma. Just because, for whatever reason, they cannot get this monkey off their back. So until they do, I'm not going to pick them to do it. Kansas State is somebody I believe that could have a chance to win the Big 12 title. I really do. They've got the best defense in the league, one of the most dynamic players in the league, and Deuce Vaughn at running back. And they've got a quarterback now that can stay, that is durable. Skylar Thompson had a bunch of injury issues. Adrian Martinez isn't I wouldn't say a top quarterback in the Big 12, but he fits the billing of a Kansas State quarterback, dual threat, doesn't need to go out and throw for 300 yards a game or rush for 100 yards and throw for 200. He's just going to get the job done. And when you have Deuce Vaughn at running back, you just need a guy that's going to be able to limit the turnovers and just do, just take whatever the defense gives you. So I think Kansas State is going to be a really, really tough matchup for WVU, especially when it comes to running the football. I don't know if you're going to be able to run the ball into the teeth of that defense. I don't know if you can stretch them out wide. They've got so many athletic guys on the outside. I feel like this is going to be a very, very tough day for West Virginia. So I've got them dropping to now 6-5. So this puts us down to our final game of the year at Oklahoma State. And look, I mean, it's just it kind of is what it is. Oklahoma State's kind of almost getting to that territory now of Oklahoma, where they've just been giving West Virginia all sorts of issues. And for whatever reason, they have not been able to beat them. I can't remember. I think maybe 2014, maybe the last time West Virginia beat Oklahoma State. It's been a while. So, and with Oklahoma State, it's not just about the history. It's the coaching staff, Mike Gundy, how well that staff has done in Stillwater. You got Spencer Sanders, who's been the most experienced, or who is the most experienced and has had the most success in the Big 12. I expect him to have his best season yet. They're losing a lot off of that very, very talented defense from a year ago. But with Derek Mason coming in, the former Vanderbilt head coach, who was at Auburn last year as the DC, I don't think there's going to be much of a drop-off there in their production. They're going to find guys. They've got guys in place that have been sitting there waiting in the wings. So very promising start for West Virginia. Have them starting off 4-0, finishing the season 2-4, or 2-6 actually, and losing their final 3 games against Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. So 6-6 on the year, going 2-6 in Big 12 play. It's not too good. Again, it's hard to really pick, wins and losses for a team that you don't know if their starting quarterback's going to be there or not. But I think the best way that I did this, or the way that I came out with these predictions, was I looked at JT Daniels' average games per season and said, okay, if he plays this amount of games, what can West Virginia do past that? And I just don't see them getting to 7, 8, 9 wins if he only plays 6 games or 7 games. He hasn't played more than 5 games since his freshman season. So that's going to be, if they only get 5 or 6 games out of JT Daniels, I mean, depending on where those 5 or 6 games come, it's going to be hard for them to get bowl eligible. I really do. I know we don't want to put a ton of stock into the quarterback position and say that that's going to help carry the team. But in this instance, like, there's just this team, although it's taking the steps in the right direction at, both sides of the ball, they're not in a position to where if their starting quarterback goes down, they can still keep going and be in a position to win multiple games. Garrett Green, Goose Crowder, Nico Marchiol, those guys, they're not quite to the level of being ready to go out there and win you multiple games. And I think that's the biggest reason why I have them held back to just 6 wins, because it feels like at some point JT is going to go down. But if he doesn't, I still think they're probably about a 6-6 team. It's a tough schedule. You're playing 11 Power 5 teams. You play 2 rivals on the road, Pitt and Virginia Tech, 2 really, crazy atmospheres those games are going to be. You've got Texas, who is going to be able to run the ball down your throat. You've got Oklahoma State, who you haven't beaten in years. You got Oklahoma, who you've never beaten in the Big 12. You got Kansas State, who's just a very tough matchup defensively. And you haven't had success against Texas Tech recently. So there's just a lot of, games that you just look at and you're like, I just don't see them winning. And even some of the wins, like I said, the Pitt game, I don't even know that they win that game. TCU, I think you could look at and say, maybe that's a game where West Virginia's offense just can't keep up with TCU. I mean, you could sit here and debate each game. I mean, I could go back and forth on the losses too, but I mean, it's just, I really felt going into this that I was probably going to have West Virginia as a 7-5 team, but 6-6, not too far off. I don't think that gets Neil Brown fired, but I do think it puts him on the hot seat going into 2023 for sure. I don't think that's a question mark. He's got to start winning football games. That's it. It's simple. But 6-6. That's my 2022 WVU football season prediction. That's just, I know a lot of people are disappointed. They wanted to see 7, 8, maybe 9 wins. I just don't see it. 6-6. I could see 7-5. 8-4 is really, really pushing it. I think that's going to be very, very tough. I think the only way they get to 8 wins is if they win 7 in the regular season and win their bowl game. But maybe I'm wrong. So 6-6 is the record prediction from me. So that's going to do it for this week's episode, or today's episode of Between the Ears show here on Mountaineers Now, a Sports Illustrated Fan Nation channel. We will be back next week. Not sure what we're going to talk about just yet. Maybe we'll start diving into some recruiting. Maybe we'll talk some, maybe a little bit of Pitt, maybe a little Virginia Tech. Who knows what we'll talk about next week. We haven't got quite to that just yet, but be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. If you don't already, follow us on Twitter at SI_WVU. You can follow me on Twitter at Callahan_. And obviously visit our site, SI West Virginia. We've got a ton of stuff going up every single day, about 7-8 stories or pieces of content going up every single day. It's that part of the year. So please go and check everything out. We greatly appreciate it. So I'm Skylar Callahan. Until next week, we'll see you guys then.